Okay, Jen, I think we are live and set to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. My name is Jana Goranson, and on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to this panel meeting. We have convened to review application in the Arts Learning Project category, and decisions made by this panel will determine the funding for all applications. They will be reviewed by the NAC Council at our next meeting, which will convene on December 12th, 2023. To begin, I'd like for each panelist to introduce yourself to one another and to those that are listening in, and I will call upon you one by one. So first, Zachary Cheek.
Hi, my name is Zachary Cheek. As it suggests, I've been on the Nebraska Arts Council since October of 2020, and I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska Music School in Lincoln. I'm from Elkhorn, born and raised, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Zachary. Our next panelist, Clark Roush.
Hi, I'm Clark Roush. I am in my second term on the board for the Nebraska Arts Council, and I am the endowed chair for the performing arts at York University in York, Nebraska.
Thank you, Clark. And our final panelist, Jacqueline Smith.
Hello, I'm Jacqueline Smith. I am from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm the Youth Studios Manager at the Union for Contemporary Arts and received my bachelor's from the University of Nebraska with general studies and art concentration and nonprofit management.
Thank you, Jacqueline. In addition to these panelists, the NAC staff members that will be present today include Mike Barkey, our Executive Director, Nick Olson, our Deputy Director, Ann Alston, Program Specialist, Jennifer Drybelbis, Grants Administrator, and she will be managing the scoring in the online grant system, Joshua Brown, Program Coordinator, and Joshua will be taking minutes, and finally, Sam Heading, Communications Manager, and he is on hand to assist with any online technical issues that we may have or if they arise. So to begin, Mike, would you like to say anything to the group?
I have learned over the years to turn on your mic first. So with that, thank you, Jana, and thank you all for, look up here. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and congratulations, and thank you for sending us an application. And for joining us this morning. As a former grant applicant myself, I can tell you that I learned so much more just by sitting in on these meetings and listening to what was said by the panelists. We have an excellent group of panelists with us today. Many of them have done this several times, and their comments are going to be very worthy. And I thank them all for joining us today. Secondly, then I'd like to encourage you, as we always do for your events, where appropriate, invite your elected officials to come in and sit in on what you do and what good public funding for the arts can do for students and the communities. All of that is always good to have them engaged in the process. And then on the back end, please make sure that you send a thank you letter to them. Elected officials are the ones that make the difference for public funding, and it's always good to let them know. I can tell you that as I meet the state legislators and other elected officials, those letters make a difference. And whenever I introduce myself as being from the world of the arts, they say, oh yeah, we always get those letters, and they're very good, and we appreciate all the things that are being done with the students across the state. So I encourage you to continue that, and with that, enjoy the panel and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anne, would you please begin by discussing this Arts Learning Project Grant Program and how the panel process works?
Yes. Sam, are you sharing slides for this section?
No, there's no slides for this section.
Oh, okay, I was thinking, okay, wow. So yes, I can tell you briefly that today we will go through 8 applications, beginning with the New Century Art Guild, and then we have 7 more to follow. Each application will begin. I will provide a short synopsis of the application, and then our chair, Jana, will call upon each of the reviewers to offer their comments. They've scored and reviewed grants according to the published rubric, scoring rubric that includes the criteria for the grants that you as applicants can also see. The panelists will enter their final scores. They've already read and reviewed the grants, but they can enter final scores, and they'll submit those scores, which will eventually be averaged. And following the discussion of all 8 of the applications this morning, we will say goodbye to the public who has joined this meeting for the final discussion about funding of those grants. Grantees will be notified in December following our quarterly council meeting, where everything is reviewed at the quarterly council meeting, December 12th, and then grantees applicants will be notified later in December whether or not their grant has been funded and for how much. So it looks to me like some people are freezing. Is it just me, or are we having some tech issues with the
It looks fine on my.
We're okay.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, Anne, for that brief overview. Are there any questions among our panelists before we begin? Okay, well, Anne will provide a brief synopsis of each application. And then I will call upon the panelists one by one for your comments. And this is the order I will call upon them in. To begin, the primary reviewer will talk, and then the secondary reviewer, and then our third reviewer. So we will now proceed with the first application, and that is the New Century Art Guild.
Okay, so the New Century Art Guild proposal is the grant, if funded, will support the Omaha's Department of Veterans Affairs, their request to continue the popular VetX Express workshop series, which will meet weekly between January and June of 2024. In the VetX Express Creative Workshop Series, veterans in a 6-week clinical substance abuse program will have the opportunity to unburden mental strain in the form of self-expressed artwork created in a fun environment that promotes healing and relaxation.
Thank you, Anne. So could we please first hear from Clark Rausch?
Yes. First of all, I would like to say thank you for taking the time that it takes to make a grant application. I thought the artistic quality, it really didn't have any weaknesses in it that I could personally find. And I think your most of my comments are going to just be on making a stronger grant, and they kind of, many of them align along the lines of how do you show us more what you tell us is happening? Because I think strong grants have data running through them, and that way it's not like we disbelieve you, but when you have facts and figures to back up what you say, it's just a stronger grant. And so for instance, like on the planning and evaluation comments, it would be helpful to know exactly how many instructors are going to be used, and something in there on arts education merit, numerous 2D, 3D, etc. Can you be more specific about knowing what exactly is being planned? it's hard to assess the goals as they really aren't written in measurable language. In other words, what are your learners going to do at the end of their instruction? That makes for a stronger grant. Any data that you can provide that supports the narrative makes a stronger grant. I really do like what you're doing. It just I don't want to have to take your word for it so much as far as just the descriptive, or what sometimes are referred to as the qualitative nature of what you do. So if you can begin to quantify and do some things either in pre-test, post-test, or come up with some sort of measurements that you can report, that just adds strength to your verbiage. You mentioned things like for the outreach and engagement section, you mentioned valuable resources. What are those valuable resources? And what it would help us to know exactly what they are and exactly how they are used. So really, a lot of this can just be wrapped up into, if you had more specificity that was based on data, that would, I think, create a stronger grant for us. And when I get philosophically what you mean when you say, things like learning to self-soothe, but what are you doing to actually show, outside of us just believing your verbiage, that there has been learning to do that there has been growth in that? I think there are some things you can probably come up with that assess where they're at when you begin, and then you assess where they're at when you end. And that way you can obviously still say learning to self-soothe, but then you provide the numerical data that backs that up. And that just makes a stronger grant, in my opinion, when you say, they're seeking, some of them even seek new professions. Which new professions do they seek? And I think that's, the most salient nuts and bolts of what I have to present.
Thank you, Clark. And now we'll go to Jacqueline Smith to see if she has anything to add.
Thank you. A lot of what Clark had said, I agree with. Again, so it's the program itself does have a lot of merit. It is something that that you did say that has been ongoing. So people keep coming back for it. Obviously, there is a need for it. Again, just to strengthen that application, it's just like more of those data points. One of the things I mentioned, as far as like evaluation, if you were to use like surveys for the participants, and as well as just documentation of the process, whether it's observational anecdotes, that sort of thing that the instructors can do at the end of each workshop. That would be a great way to notate those things, along with just even taking photographs of the process. All of those things help show and paint that picture of what it is that you're trying to do. I think with the goals themselves, I think they're great. I would like to see goals a little bit more focused, be more explicit to like the learning process. What things that you want them to take away from this. As far as the demographics, those aspects of that, I think, again, being more specific, as far as I think there's mention that the participants and the board members and the instructors all come from a variety of backgrounds. More specificity in that would also strengthen this. You can collect that information like through the surveys as well, or there are, if you're wanting to use a more broad, there are places where you can find that like research about some of that information that might have already been collected, and all of that can be done anonymously. I do think that I will mention that the opportunity that you provide for the participants to show their work with the public, that it's really strong. And I think that's a great way to include that outreach engagement component. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Zach, do you have anything to add for this application?
Sure, definitely. So going back to my notes here, this is the first time I'm lucky enough to review this kind of panel grant, but having reviewed other panel or having been on other panels and reviewed other grants in the past, I think that one overarching pattern that I could see is that at least for me, but perhaps I'd like to think for other grant assessors as well, I will never complain from having too much information. So going back to what I saw here, for instance, the work samples, I wish that the work samples would have encompassed more of what this program is and is doing and is capable of going forward. The picture is very nice and I appreciated it, but I would have loved to see more of samples, for lack of more descriptive words. And then also going through this, so looking at kind of bouncing off what the other two reviewers said, they talked about what the goals were and are. And the note I said was, I believe somewhere in the application it said we receive texts from our administrators, and that is a good way for us to gauge our progress. But I'm thinking to myself, is our text from an administrator really the best way to gauge forward progress in terms of what your goals are, how you're achieving them, and what evidence you have that they are being achieved? So I would, from what I understood, I think there might be other ways to keep records of how you're meeting your goals and how you can evidence to grant reviewers that you are working to meet your goals. And another thing that I think about sometimes is that a lot of organizations, forgive me, I don't mean to compare this to other applications or anything like that, but just thinking that, I would have loved to see even slightly quantitative data saying, well, we're hoping to get in contact with former participants, and we're hoping that a majority of them will give positive results. And I feel like a lot of applications are sometimes a little scared to make commitments like that because they think maybe like nobody is going to review your grant a year from now, would come to your next grant and say, oh, they didn't meet their report card on this progress. We just like to see that you're setting goals and working to achieve them, and that you're keeping good records of your own progress towards those goals. That's very reassuring for me as a grant reviewer. So beyond that, the outreach and engagement, I had no critiques that came to mind, but those were my major comments. I love the work that that the VA is doing, that this project is doing, and I'm very grateful that it is taking place. And that's all that came to mind for me.
Thank you, Zach. Now we'll just take a moment if any of the panelists want to readjust their scoring. And if you're good, let me know you're good. Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the next application, which is Bright Lights, and Anne will give a quick synopsis.
So the Bright Lights application proposes to request funding for 7 of the summer camps with an arts focus in Lincoln next summer. Bright Lights provides over 100 different camps to hundreds of students in kindergarten through 8th grade for 5 weeks every summer. Camps are STEAM-based: science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and they involve hands-on learning. The camps proposed take place between June and July next summer.
Thank you, Anne. So we will begin with our primary reviewer, Zach.
Absolutely. And it was so cool to see all the stuff that this organization is doing as well. So let me go through my notes here. So basing it off the rubric, of course. For the artistic quality section, I was very impressed. Here, the notes I took were the proposal sufficiently tells me of Brightlight's program's ability to enrich young lives through the arts. The work samples video is good evidence of satisfied participants. The arts education value seems very diverse with much to offer for many different kids, and the artist bios suggest that it's the best that the area has to offer, so I had no criticisms there. Then on planning evaluation, the comments I wrote down was I wish there was more information in the goals available, not sound like a broken record, to provide some relatively more objective evaluation. Based on the goals, I feel like two people could look at the exact same evidence and come to two completely different conclusions about whether or not those goals were reached. And so something a little less ambiguous would be nice. Let me look at what else I wrote. The evaluation section provides easily quantifiable information, such as scholarship tracking information, but doesn't actually provide any metrics. And then I wrote, it's great that they have fundraising goals. Fantastic, in fact, I'm elated. But please, oh, please tell me what they are. The planning process and budget both look good to me. And then going to the third section, outreach and engagement, I wrote, it's great to see how many scholarships are given and that as many need-based scholarships are given as possible, as they said, but I don't see numbers to back this up necessarily. For example, 14% of attendees last summer were from minority groups and 111 scholarships were awarded, but how many of these scholarships went to minority groups? If all scholarships are need-based, that would illuminate this a little bit more, but they don't necessarily say so in the application, just that they try to maximize the number of need-based scholarships they can provide. Which could be 15%, it could be 95%. They're just saying we're providing as many as possible. And another thing I said was, and this might be something I missed in my review of it, but I said, who are the community partners Brightlights works with to identify scholarship eligible students? Are they the same groups it works in with other capacities such as the Bay and Lincoln? I'm not told one way or the other. And then I wrote in my notes, pardon the cynicism. I like the layers of support. The first one threw me off a little bit because it was from a staff member rather than someone from outside the program who can vouch for the program. But alongside the second letter, both left me with a very positive impression about the lasting impact Brightlights has provided, does provide, and can continue to provide. So those were the major comments I had.
Thank you, Zach. And now our second reviewer, Jacqueline.
Overall, I felt this application was a fairly strong one. I feel like it met expectations as far as artistic quality, planning and evaluation. I think my one comment about the outreach and engagement aspect of it was specifically as far as it detailed like how the organization was involved in the community. However, I'd like to see examples of how the project itself extends beyond the outreach of the target audience. Like, are there opportunities? What are the points of access or opportunities for like outside the target audience to engage with the project versus just more outreach based opportunities to inform folks of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And then Clark, do you have anything to add?
I just thoroughly enjoyed just seeing the word STEAM somewhere. I thought that was wonderful. I don't think some of the STEM people see that word enough. I just love the variety of your choices. I thought I understand all the things Zach was saying, and certainly this does not counter that in any way, shape, or form. But I thought that what you did have was really, 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 really good. And I really liked that you had in one assessment language is kind of called closing the loop. And at the end, you do have an evaluation process. that kind of ties up what you did and then has direct impact on what you're going to do in the future. And I think that's a necessary component of any sort of assessment, whether it be a business, a university, a family budget, or an arts project like this. I love the outreach. I thought the video and Facebook documentation was really good, and I just loved seeing all the smiles on all the students and how much they were enjoying what you're doing with them. And that's, I think, all I have to share.
Thank you, Clark. So I will give our panelists just a minute if they need to alter anything on their end. And if we're good, we will go to our next application, which is Echo Collective. Anne, if you could give us a brief overview.
Yes, the Echo Collective's weaving program provides refugee and immigrant women the opportunity to learn the art of textile weaving while building a supportive community. Since its inception in 2021, the weaving program has served 13 new American women and 7 of their children, and complements the Echo Collective's other textile programs.
Thank you, Anne. So we will now go to our primary reviewer, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Again, I felt that overall this application was really strong. I appreciate as far as the artistic quality. I did really appreciate as far as the artists selected, that there was a representation of the community that it serves. So just seeing that transformation of including a former participant as an artist, and even now they're a part of the staff. It just shows to the magnitude of this program. As far as the evaluation, I do feel like some of the learning expectations were a bit unclear. I think, again, benefiting from a little bit more specificity in this part of it would be helpful. I do want to say that there was mention of some of the artistic techniques and practices, but I think there could be a little bit more specificity in that. You do share a few different ways of how you evaluate the project's overall goals. I do think those make sense to me. As far as the outreach and engagement overall, I feel like it was strong. There was some evidence that provided as far as the outreach and impact. I think it would including some of the numbers. I think there could be a little bit more in depth with that. As far as the extended outreach, I do feel that there could be a little bit more focus on that. Again, how is this project reaching the target audience, folks beyond the target audience? So thinking of of exhibitions, public demonstrations, publications, those types of things. How are we reaching beyond this project? And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And now our secondary reviewer, Zach.
Absolutely. Here, let me just get this back up. So yeah, I largely agree with Jacqueline and everything she said. So as someone who comes from a refugee family, I think it was amazing, and I loved seeing everything that this organization is doing, that this project is doing. And I had a lot of fun reviewing it. Let me look. So artistic quality, I was incredibly impressed. No major critiques came to mind. For planning and evaluation, I agree with Jacqueline. I wrote that I wasn't sure what it necessarily meant to finish the program, what a participant is expected when they go, and, if it's maybe a nightly thing where people is in a somewhat open format, people come and leave as needed. That was something that I wrote. And of course, this is amazing demographic diversity as could be expected. One thing that came to mind was not only for this application, but any application I try to review, or any application I do review that mentions community demographics, a home run answer for me would be something along the lines, not that this was bad by any means, but a home run answer would be something along the lines of, this program operates in Lincoln and Lancaster County, Nebraska. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the Lincoln metropolitan area has a diversity of based on 2020 data. The proportion of African Americans are this, proportion of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are this, and this is a backdrop against which 1,500 refugees have recently come to the Lincoln area, providing a diverse community and an understanding population who can better serve the needs of a refugee community in Lincoln and in this program. So that's just something that came to mind. Like, if you say this program operates in Millard in Douglas County, Nebraska, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the Omaha metro area has these demographics, that would be amazing. Just going forward, not only for this program, but any program where we mention community demographics, just census.gov would be great. Beyond that, sort of the pseudo soapbox lecture there, forgive me, that was all that came to mind. It was amazing. I said, what does it mean to finish the program? That was the only question I was left with. So awesome.
Thank you, Zach. Clark, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, the artistic quality I thought was very appropriate for what they're being done, for what they're doing. For planning and evaluation, it may take a similar take to some what others said, but it wasn't clear how you assess the success of our instruction. And I think it would be helpful if you came up with some sort of rubric or scale or non-qualitative measure that would show us in a stronger way. Parenthetically, I love the phrase "New American Women." I just love that so much. And so really my heart was just felt so good reading this, but I also want my mind not to necessarily have to just take your word for it. So anything that you can do, building from this point forward, with stronger analytics would make for a stronger grant. And particularly, I think you should keep an ongoing track of what research calls your N. That's the number of students or people involved in this, because the smaller the N gets, the least you can extrapolate what you think into a broader audience. And so if you're going to be doing grants in the future, then as that N grows, I think it adds strength to future grants if you don't just tell us what you did this last year, but you have an accumulative total of how many people did it, and this is how we assess our teachers, and of course, echoing Zach about the demographics. So anything you can do in the form of analytics to add strength to what is already here, well, then it just makes it that much stronger. But thank you for your effort and your time in filling this out.
Thank you, Clark. I'll give the panelists just a minute if they need to adjust anything. Looks like people are good. Thank you. Our fourth application is Opera Omaha, and Anne will give us a brief overview.
Yes, Opera Omaha's Poetry and Music Project will take place between January and the end of April. Opera Omaha anticipates receiving poetry submissions from over 100 students across the state, following 16 writing workshops with approximately 200 students. 150 or more family, and community members will attend the final concert in spring of 2024, which will highlight the 12 students whose poems were set to music by professional composers.
Thank you, Anne. And for our first reviewer, we'll listen to Zach, please.
Zach won't have much to say, granted, just because I was incredibly impressed by everything that I saw. I didn't realize this was the one I would be, well, I mean, it was on the list. I realized it was the one to be reviewing next, but it wasn't consciously on my mind because I actually wrote down just a little soapbox rant I was giving them. Maybe giving demographic numbers for the Metro would be nice. It was good to hear, though, listing some of the high schools they work with. Let me pull it up here, saying that they work with Omaha South, Omaha North, and other schools in rural communities that have previously participated in the project. That was something that I loved seeing. What else did I write? Yeah, I had no major criticisms. I was very impressed, and I love the artist's support. I watched the recording a few times over, and so I'm sorry I don't have more to add off the top of my mind except good things. So
Thank you, Zach. And our secondary reviewer is Clark.
Dr. Roush, you're muted.
I'm going to start with this, just like, wow. Such good stuff here. And I'm just going to take a couple of anecdotal things because you've done so many good things here. I don't want you to think we don't see them, or that you're like, well, did we do like overkill, or did we do like what? Or no. I saw data even in the brief summary, and my heart leapt for joy at that moment. And your project description uses data to prove your statements. Yay, 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 yay. And I loved what you're doing, being tied to national standards and state standards and benchmarking externally and your goals and all that kind of stuff. I want to be sure that gets a major thumbs up, because I just think that this is almost possibly a template for the amount of detail and data-driven information that should be in a grant. And I just want to say kudos, and be sure you know that as grant panelists, reviewers, that we see that and we know that and we appreciate it. It makes for such an incredibly strong grant. On the outreach and community engagement, I just said exemplary, fine collaboration, congratulations, and thank you. I don't get to say that as often as one might think, so I wanted to be sure and say it for this one.
Thank you, Clark, for that glowing report. And I would like to now hear from Jacqueline if she has anything to add as the other reviewer.
Yeah, I feel like, again, kind of echoing everyone else's sentiments. This was a very strong application. I do feel, though, that there could have been a bit more information as far as the underserved community, the outreach aspects with there. Just again, it's just including more data points, as like mentioned before. That's, I think, in this part of it, that's the only thing that I really felt like could have been improved upon. But overall, I feel like there are lots of details, lots of information. In this case, more is more always. So I appreciate the thoroughness that this application was completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I'll give the reviewers just a minute to glance over their scoring. I think it looks good. All right, we will move on to our fifth application, Sandhills RC&D, with a brief overview from Anne.
Yeah, so the Sandhills RC&D proposal tells us that the Mullen Art Center will be hosting Deborah Joy Grosser, a native Nebraska artist, at a plein air art class. It will be held at the Dismal River Club in May of 2024. The class will be limited to 15 students to allow for one-to-one instruction. A free mini workshop will be held at the conclusion of the class at the Mullen Arts Center and will be open to the public. Class participants will be able to enter their work to be judged at the conclusion of the class.
Thanks, Anne. We will begin our review with Jacqueline.
Thank you. So overall, I feel like the artistic quality of the project is strong. However, I do just want to note this particular project seems to favor more participants from outside the local community or Nebraska community. So that was a little bit of concern. I do understand that there is a free mini demonstration that is tied in with this project. With that said, I feel like that for me was actually the stronger component for what you're applying for. So I would have liked the focus to be a little bit more on that opportunity to invite the local community to participate in this free workshop rather than the focus being on the classes, the workshop itself. That said, I do feel like everything else supported the workshop as far as the planning process and evaluation. Again, I think the biggest thing for me was where the focus was. I feel like that's pretty much all I have to say about this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Clark.
Okay, the artistic quality I thought was high. My comments in the planning and evaluation section, I would have liked more information on exactly how you wish to attract students. That obviously is what any program would be after, but that's kind of a nebulous thing that's just out there. Well, we want to attract more students, but how are you going to do that? What is your plan for doing that? And then you would be able to assess if that plan was good, or if you hit a target goal, or if you didn't. And that doesn't necessarily mean the success or lack thereof of a particular program, but again, it provides more data points, more structure, and more intentionality in the planning and evaluation. And I think that's an important aspect of strong grants. I would like to know what you consider how many students would equal success. Again, that's more data points. If the planning and evaluation process has more detail, it would make for a stronger grant, and it wouldn't come across quite as much as we just hope this thing, kind of turns out okay at the end. Now, I want to say I don't doubt your intent in any way, shape, or form. I just want to see as much detail in the before, or about the before, the during, and the after, and how that is accompanied by hard data, and then how you're going to use that data-driven information to inform what happened, and then what is going to happen if there is a next time. The outreach and engagement, I just wrote, it's very small and it's very focused. I don't view that as a negative. It just seemed that's like maybe the point, and that's intentional. So that was my only comment. I guess that closes my comments about this grant application.
Thanks, Clark. Zach, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll pander for a little, or not pander, but pontificate for a little bit. Let me think. Well, one thing I really like about our grant process is, and one thing I like about the Arts Councils all around their grant process is that I feel like it helps organizations sometimes focus on what they want and what they're trying to achieve. I know that's true for a lot of the Creative Art District programs that the Arts Council uh, does, but so talking about, where the rubber hits the road, where the organization can be doing outreach and engagement and writing about it. Like, so let me see like the notes I took. So for one thing, I saw that, like Jacqueline said, that the membership is restricted to 15 students, and that's definitely okay. I don't mean to say 15's inadequate in any way, but better telling us on how those 15 students result in a broader community impact is what I'm looking to see when I'm reviewing that. So it doesn't have to be dozens or hundreds of students, but I definitely want to see as a reviewer, you saying, well, these 15 students are from organizations which are geographically or diverse in some other aspect. And that would better translate to a community impact, which I value as I assess a grant. And beyond that, let me see. I also wrote that evaluation seems somewhat subjective, based mainly on turnout. And I also wrote that outreach is somewhat meager. And as I understand it, and panelists or staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, the organization requesting this grant is Sandhills RC&D. And so I wish that the letter of support would have not come from someone within Sandhills RC&D. So what I'm looking for in a letter of support is something to attribute that community impact or that demographic diversity that we're looking for. And so the good thing for Sandhills RC&D is we give you a lot of latitude in that. If you can talk about maybe reaching out to your state senator for the area saying, I think this has a lot of impact, and he writes a letter, or she. I don't know the state senator from Walland, but or if you were able to get a parent of a former community part or a former participant, or if you're able to get a I would be okay with a board member, just someone who can testify. The letters of support that get me up in the morning and get me excited to review these grants are the ones that say, I was a former stakeholder in this project, or I was someone who is a member of the community in which this project operates, and I have seen firsthand the work that it does. And so seeing a letter of support from within the organization, I definitely appreciated, forgive me for not having started with this when making the point, I definitely appreciated the ability for Sandhills RC&D to better impress upon me how important the organization is, how important the project is, and how much the grant would help. But I also wish that more of that argument could be put in the grant application sans the letters of support, and that the letters of support in its unique role can testify more to that community impact in the words of a community member. So that was the main thing that came to mind for me. And yeah, like I said, one thing I appreciate about these grant applications is it sometimes helps organizations focus what they're looking for. Like I remember when I was a student in Lincoln and I was the University of Nebraska's candidate for like the Rhodes Scholarship, the Marshall Scholarship, and I had to write dozens of pages going into minutia about, what I wanted in grad school, XYZ, and this and that and the other. But then when it came to actually doing my own applications for grad school, it was very easy to communicate, this is what I'm looking for in X, Y, and Z. And so, again, pardon the rant. It's just, I think that this grant application can be used as an opportunity to help focus your goals, and that these are the kinds of goals I would like to see focused in terms of future applications. Talking about that community impact, talking about the demographic diversity, and yeah, I also love what the program does. Forgive me for not having talked more about how impressed I was by the impact, but this is all just things. This is all the stuff once I cut off the 75% of amazing things I saw. This was what I would have loved to see more from the program going forward.
Thank you, Zach. We will now go to our next application, Sing Omaha, and Ann will give a brief overview.
Let's see. Okay, yes, Sing Omaha's plans are to bring in a guest composer slash conductor, Andy Beck, for a youth choir festival experience on Saturday, April 20th at St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Papillion. The festival features Sing Omaha's 3 children choirs, grades K through 2, 3 youth choirs, grades 3 through 6. A choral reading clinic with Andy Beck will also be offered free of charge for area teachers on April 19th.
Thank you, Anne. We will now begin with our first reviewer, Clark Roush.
All right, thank you for taking the time to make this application. On our rubric under artistic quality, I just wrote bringing in a top name clinician is a great idea. That's going to bring notoriety to the program and especially for the reading session, possibly an enhanced reach for teachers that would come just to hear him present material in a reading session that might not even come to a concert per se. So I just thought that was a great idea, and I just put this anecdotally in there that I love the expansion into the Gretna site, which I'll comment on more later. But since it's new, it just be aware. Obviously, it might not reach the same musical heights as something that is ongoing and established. But it's great to bring this to a new group of students and a new group of audiences. Okay. Pardon the length of this quote, but it's right out of the grant itself. Our leadership team evaluates every choral concert of such season, but we pay special attention to the artistic impact of performances that feature collaboration with professional guest artists. We review the effectiveness of the chosen repertoire, the amount of allotted combined rehearsal time, and the overall artistic experience for performers and audience alike. Okay, that is a great process, and I love it. But I don't see how you do that. How do you evaluate? Do you use a rubric? Do you use a Likert scale? Do you use surveys? Is it only qualitative measures? Are there a group of people sitting around the room that went, oh man, I thought that was really cool? And probably was. But is there any quantitative measures? I think if you added those and were able to describe to us what you use and how you use those and how those inform future decisions, that would just make what I think is a pretty strong grant even more robust. I love the data in the demographic section. Again, I'm not sure what people think when they go through this kind of stuff, but I just want to reinforce, I don't think it's even possible to give us too much information. And so if you're ever writing one of these and you're like, well, I wonder if we should, yeah, you probably should. So let's go ahead and do that. But that one suggestion about evaluating the process, I think it would be stronger. And you may have that already. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying I didn't see it in the grant. And so pardon me if it's there and I missed it. For outreach and engagement, I love the extension into Gretna. That's good. I think that'll help your overall goals. Be sure you track stuff and have some real hard data-driven stuff to make your decisions and to share with us on any future grants that you might want to present to the Arts Council. I think the data that you showed proving underserved community outreach, that's the kind of stuff that really adds more strength to it. Otherwise, you would have just said something like, well, where we're striving to reach underserved communities. Well, I don't know what striving means. I don't know how you strive. But when you provide the data that shows that you're doing that, then I can be like, awesome. That is so cool. They're nailing it. They're doing it. And it just gives me more confidence in what you say. And so those are my comments about what I thought was a really fine grant, but a few ways that it could have been made stronger.
Thanks, Clark. We'll now hear from Zach.
Awesome. Yeah, I was mainly excited to hear what Dr. Roush had to say for obvious reasons of what he does when we're not in these panels. What was I going to say? But yeah, and just to go off that, I think that like I said, nobody is going to consider this a self-imposed rubric upon which we judge you going forward. If you say we are going to ask this amount of people, like this percent of the participants' questions, we interpret success to be when we receive responses like this, more than like that. Nobody's going to come back and later and say, well, did you live up to your self-imposed goals? We just want to see that you were setting the goals. And even for me, I'm okay with something more qualitative. If you say we have conversations with a few a few first-time participants, a few returnees, and when we get a positive feedback based on those conversations, we keep those on hand to keep in mind as we plan going forward. That's a qualitative, that's a non-quantitative aspect of self-evaluation, which still impresses upon me. Forgive me for using the word impress so much. Maybe it's because I am impressed with this application all around. But and Jacqueline, I want to ask your cat's name later. But I think that those are some of the ways in which I could better have an idea in my mind going forward. With that said, I already had a pretty good idea in my mind because it's an amazing applications. I used the words home run, slam dunk, and any other sports metaphor I could find for a former member of the Cornhusker marching band. That's what I wrote. And what else? Look, sound. I said I especially three especiallys loved the letters from the stakeholders. So yeah, I love this. This was really, really fun for me to review, and that's all I had.
Thanks, Zach. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I feel like everyone so far has made some excellent points. The only thing I think I will comment on is as far as the community demographics and the underserved community outreach. I think that while there was some data points that were represented, I think there could be a little bit more details. Like you say that there's like 70 different schools from 10 school districts and homeschool students. And then you also say like the 15% about Title I. That's great information. There could be a little bit more. I think it would just be nice to know where some of those like schools are and like maybe like the percentages of those schools like represented would be helpful information. As far as the underserved community outreach, you do state that we make explicit room for musicians from historically underrepresented musicians on the basis of race, ethnicity, all of those things. But I don't really see anything to demonstrate that. So again, any data that you're collecting that helps demonstrate those claims would only strengthen your application. Other than that, definitely also agree as far as the letters of support. Those are strong, especially coming from community members. And I also really love the aspects that you have included as far as like the outreach engagement as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll give the panelists a second to look at their scores.
Jana, question, do you want to take a 5-minute break at this point, or we just have 2 more? Would you rather just go through the remaining grants?
It doesn't matter, whatever you guys would like to do. What does everybody think? Clark says keep on going. Is that okay with you guys? Okay, is that okay with you, Ann?
Sure, you bet.
We'll keep on rolling. The 7th grant is from the University of Nebraska Kearney. And Anne, do you want to give us a little overview?
Yeah, I was looking at, is Zach, are you there? And he had to step away for a second.
Okay,
Um, he's the secondary reviewer.
he is secondary on this one.
Yeah, maybe we should just wait a second and to
Okay,
make sure Zach
go
is back.
Okay, we'll wait just a minute. Won't take a formal break, but we'll wait just a second.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question while we got a moment of Jacqueline? Jacqueline, you mentioned a leadership fellowship, and I was just wondering who that was through.
So it was through the regional arts organizations. So the National Leaders of Color cohort. It was the first one this past year, the 2020. Yeah, 2022, 2023. And so West Staff was the one that kind of led the charge, but all the other RAOs, USA RAOs, were a part of that. So basically each state and district, there was one representative that was selected for that. And yeah, so it was a really good opportunity.
Great. And you had some information about it?
Well, I was going to ask, so I was curious too, because you mentioned it earlier, and I know about the cohort. Was the Mid-America Arts Alliance very involved in that?
Yeah. Yes. So with that, the Mid-America Arts Alliance, yes. So the cohort was also then divided into our regional, smaller cohorts. So while there was over 50 of us a part of it, we were divided down by regional representations. So I was a part of that Mid-America Arts Alliance. And one of the really wonderful things about that program was that it did really help connect us with our USA RAOs and the different ways that we can become more involved. And as a result, I was able to secure funding for myself and some of the other participants from the Mid-America Arts Alliance to attend the Arts Administrators of Color convening this past weekend.
I don't want to hold things up much more, but can you just real quickly tell me how you became aware of that program?
The Nebraska Arts Council, actually.
We did that?
Yeah, and said something to someone, and all of a sudden I see this email oh, so I heard that you might be interested in this, and I was, and I applied and I was accepted. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Well, I was just down at the conference for the Mid-America Arts Alliance, and they were promoting a lot of these programs, and it certainly sounds like it's a very worthwhile one. So I'm glad you were able to participate. Glad we had something to do with it. And as Brigitte knows, that Mid-America Arts Alliance is a pretty good organization.
Yes.
For the rest of you, Brigitte McQueen just won the Marian Anderson Leadership in the Arts Awards given out by the Mid-America Arts Alliance. So that was congratulations to everybody in your organization, all the good things you're doing. Wonderful. I'm sorry, I've taken up enough time. Back to you.
Oh, that's all wonderful. Wonderful news. We will go back then and we will look at the University of Nebraska Kearney's application.
Okay, so yes, UNK's proposal is for the Loper Launch Enrichment Camp, or LLEC for short, to offer high-quality, engaging art-based curriculum to children of lower socioeconomic status during June of next summer. In the past 4 years, they have averaged an attendance of over 380 students per year. And with nearly 900 seats in the summer camp, they anticipate at least 400 students from Kearney and surrounding communities to participate next summer.
Thanks, Anne. Our primary reviewer is Clark.
Okay, I guess I'm going to preface these remarks. It's kind of a personal anecdote, but it's not an agenda or an opinion. But each of the last 2 times the Higher Learning Commission has come to assess our university to see if we could keep our accreditation and federal funding and all that. The university has asked me to sit on the steering committee for that. And because of largely of that, I am just an assessment freak. And so when I look at something, I'm looking for not did you say this? I'm looking for what data can you give me that validates what you said. And I thought this was a wonderful grant. Just I first of all, I liked for artistic quality. I loved the breadth and the scope of it because it isn't just focused on one particular area. And I personally kind of like the shotgun approach, you know, that we're going to hit as many different things as our demographic is interested in as we can. I think that's a wonderful thing to do with the arts and a good use of funding. I love the data and the summary. I thought that was a good start. I think your planning and evaluation are very thorough and very detailed. And it's just made an incredibly strong grant here. And I thought your outreach and engagement was very planned and very detailed. And because I think the person that submitted it must have been female, I wrote brava, which is the Italian for, you know, well done for a female.
Thanks, Clark. Our secondary reviewer is Zach.
Okay, awesome. And disclaimer, I am not an assessment freak, but maybe in my second term or maybe 38 years from now, whichever comes later, I too can one day become an assessment freak. But in the meantime, let's see what I took down. So one thing I said was I love the work samples. I love how holistic it is, like Dr. Roush said. Maybe the second work sample could have been something more specific to a sample of an artistic product. As I understand it, bless you, Ann. As I understand it, sorry, I thought you sneezed. The work sample, as I understand it, the first work sample was a rubric of the program or a schedule or something along a catalog. And then the second one was also a schedule. And so the schedule did add a little bit of detail, but it didn't really add more than the first work sample already did. I would have appreciated something more specific to an artistic product. And then beyond that, I was very impressed, and no other large criticisms or critiques came to criticism was too strong a word for such an amazing proposal. No other critiques came to mind.
Thanks, Zach. Jennifer, do you have anything to add? Or Jacqueline, my brain froze. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add?
So funny thing is, I do have a twin sister whose name is
Oh.
Jennifer.
Well, I knew that. See, so.
Not identical.
The
but
one thing to not do is call her Jennifer.
True.
Yeah, this was a very, very, very strong application for me. I feel like it definitely hit the mark on all of the things. One thing I would like to note is the little bit of census information that you did include in your description of the demographics. So brava on that as well. So that's all I really have to say. I feel like everything really hit the mark with this. You gave lots of details and percentages and data points. Yeah, I have no critiques for this application.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Okay, I'll give the panelists just a minute if they need to tweak anything. Everybody looks good. Okay, we are now at our final application from Westside Community Schools.
Okay, the Arts for Me project is a collaboration between Westside Community Schools, Kaneko organization, and several prominent artists. which is designed to provide students with special needs the opportunity to engage in a meaningful creative arts experience that fosters creativity, form, genre, and expression. As an adapted arts course, students are provided individualized instruction and support to guide their creative journeys.
Thanks, Anne. So we will start with Jacqueline.
All right. So again, I feel that this application was pretty strong. I do feel that the summary was clear about the project, like overview, the artistic evaluation, or the overall artistic quality was strong. Let's see. And then hold on. Yeah, I feel like there were clear goals that were presented. I would have liked to see a little bit more as far as with the goals, just as far as what those like learning expectations were, that could have been a bit stronger for me. As far as the there was mention a lot about the qualitative data. I know that there's also tracking like some quantitative things as far as like the number of students served in the community. So I feel that overall that's pretty strong. It would again, it would just be nice to see just a little bit more details with that. I think that obviously it is a very targeted community that this project is intended to serve. And I feel like there was a lot of information to support that, as well as the impact. The fact that, again, this project culminates in an exhibition for folks to come and be a part of, also just really proves and strengthens that outreach component that of the project that we're looking for. So I feel like other than that, everything feels pretty strong. So thank you.
Thank you. Clark, you're the secondary reviewer for this application.
Okay, artistic quality. I just wrote spot on. Bullseye, whatever other metaphor you want to use for you nailed it. In the planning and evaluation section, I thought your rationale was well articulated in the project description. Kudos for that. Excellent detail in the arts education merit section. I thought your project goals were measurable. That always makes me happy. It was a detailed project evaluation section. It's a strong proposal. It's well thought out. I think your planning, your implementation, and your evaluation are detailed and strengthened by that combination that was previously mentioned of both the qualitative and the quantitative measures. For outreach and engagement, this is a great idea. I like that you're reaching out to an underserved population, and as someone looking at the nuts and bolts of the grant, my heart was happy. As someone who just so acutely believes in the humanity of the arts, I actually got tears in my eyes as I was reading this and thinking about the people, the precious souls that are going to be exposed to something to elevate the quality of their life. And it really touched me and moved me. And I just thought this was a wonderful, wonderful, not just project, but a wonderful grant asking help in supporting the project. So thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Zach, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yes, let me see what I wrote. Yeah, my heart was also happy from reading this. The happiness it only gets from otherwise avoiding red meat or eating Cheerios. I attempted a joke. Okay. The only thing I said was I saw that it was expanding into Millard Public Schools. So talking about how maybe the demographics of Millard as opposed to West Side would how the expansion to let me think of how to phrase this. How would the expansion from West Side to Millard situate itself within a broader goal of demographic outreach or serving low income students or something like that? If they wrote on that and I didn't catch it, my bad, ignore me. I'm just the guy in the back with many opinions, but yeah, I don't have much else to say. I was also very happy from reading this application, and maybe I was dehydrated because I wasn't crying, but I should have.
Thank you, Zach. Well, that concludes our panelist discussion on all of the grants. And all of the applications have been discussed and scored. We will now take a 5-minute break. And during this time, the NAC staff will tally the scores and prepare information for final discussion. And when all the panelists reconvene, we will review the procedures and then make final determinations. The final portion of the meeting is closed to the public. So this time we will say goodbye to all the applicants and members of the public who have joined in. And we want to thank you for joining in on this discussion. Grant applicants will be notified by mid-December about the funding decision for your project. Again, thanks for joining us, and we will now take a 5-minute break.